Hi, I'm Alistair Weaver, and welcome to an Edmunds U-Drags special. We just published our 50th race, so we thought we'd take the opportunity to look back at some of the highlights, to go behind the scenes and talk about why and how we do it. I'm delighted to be joined by our head of testing and frustratingly rapid Edmunds U-Drags driver, Jonathan Elfalan, and the godfather of the Edmunds U-Drags concept and Edmunds head of video, Brendan Thomas. So Brendan, if we start with you, you dreamt up this idea a couple of years ago now. Why?
I think for me it was more out of frustration. And I think there's two levels of frustration in that. One is seeing a car like the GT 500, which we had in our long-term fleet back then, be beaten in a straight line all the time, and you knew that car actually had more to it than just a straight line race. I think the other reason why is just drag racing in itself was all over the internet, and it was just like a bit overdone for me. And so after we did the Plaid versus motorbike, which everyone should go check out, it was those two sort of things to me. It's like, oh, we need to come up with another idea. And within that other idea, you kind of work around, oh, well, let's go to a track then. But covering a track is, really hard when it comes to cameras. And it's also, I wanted it to be about the cars and not necessarily the driver. Like, what is the best car, not what is the best driver.
Jonathan, we spend a lot of money and time testing vehicles down at our test track here at Edmunds. You lead that process, but this is something different, and maybe we should start, if you're not super familiar with U-Drags. The basic principle is you go in a straight line, you brake like hell, you turn around, and you race back again. So this was kind of like an extension of our testing, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, if you think of it, it's really sort of the smallest sort of racetrack you can kind of cram into a space that gives you acceleration performance, it gives you braking performance, it gives you, just a touch of quartering performance, but that still matters. That's a part of it. And so really, it's kind of taking that racetrack, the idea of having a racetrack head to head and compressing it down into pretty much the smallest space you can.
Yes.
And have it repeatable, and have it, done safely. Because I think, when you're going head to head at a racetrack too, if you have like a bike and a car together, I mean, there's opportunity for collisions to happen there. With the U-Drags, it's also very safe.
Yeah, I mean, even car to car at a track, you're always vying for position. So
exactly.
It becomes almost becomes a driver thing then, like a driver tactic.
Yeah. There's racecraft, and then there's the, head-to-head, wheel-to-wheel racing, as they call it. And this is pretty much about as safe as you can have wheel-to-wheel racing at the same time without, the risk of running into the other person.
And we should maybe, before we get into the race themselves, look at how we put this together, because finding where we do this, and we've made a top secret. This is like the recipe for Coke. We never actually want to disclose where we are, but finding a facility that was that big and had that much width so you could actually do a turn was a bit of a challenge, I seem to remember.
Yeah, I mean, I went, I guess, digitally analog on this, as in I used a digital source to do it, but it was analog in the sense that I was literally on Google Earth, looking for a place that would be big enough to do this on, because one of the things is that we wanted the quarter mile to be in there like a normal drag race, because everyone wants to hear a quarter mile number and a 0 to 60 and things like that. So it's like, okay, we need that. But then we need a braking distance, which we won't tell you exactly what that distance is, but we had to calculate that in there. But then we need runoff on either end of that, because if the car can't brake, we need to be able to safely have the car go forward. And then when it goes over the start-finish line, it needs to have all that braking space as well. And it also needs to be wide enough that we can turn around in. And so I knew I was after, a very big surface. So it's literally, let's go to Google Earth and start looking at all of North America to find this. And that's what it was. After, finding the location on Google Earth, at the same time, I'm having conversations with Jonathan and going through kind of the logistics of how do you actually do this. I mean, I had never done it before, and obviously Jonathan hadn't, so him and his team had to go out, once we found a place to do it, or to test it, to actually go out and measure it all out and work out how it actually we do it.
Yeah, I really liked the concept. Like when you kind of presented it to me, and I'm like, Because I'm really not a fan of drag racing. The straight line, like I find it like extremely boring, as I think maybe other people do.
That's going to prompt the comments. Edmund said testing says drag racing is really boring.
Well, it's not my preferred form of motorsport, but just me personally. So the U-Drags really added a different twist on this stuff, and so. Yeah, I mean, going out and then physically looking at those sites really kind of changed our perspective.
Yeah.
And actually running some dry runs and realizing, oh, we need this much distance to do the braking, and it certainly evolved as we got in faster and faster cars in there. But it's been a fun project to work with.
I think we're going to talk more about like the behind the scenes and how we did it. We should probably get into the first of the races, rather than we just blathering on for the next half hour. The most popular one we've ever done was actually one of the first ones, which maybe stands to reason, but it also showed like how popular old school American muscle is in the concept. So that was Corvette against CT5 Blackwing, which neither of us actually drove it. So it's a great example.
I wanted to drive it, yeah.
But that was like crazy close, and just showed that this concept of picking one slightly unusual, in this case a mid-engine supercar, sports car supercar, as you like, against a kind of really fast sedan, and how that kind of measures up. But it was a great early example of how the kind of concept works.
Go. There we go. Woo, this car launches hard. Brake.
The strange thing from a production standpoint on that race is that when we ran it, I think it was actually the very first race that we had ever run. Because they were so close, it was a photo finish and we didn't actually know who won. And that happened twice in a row, and we're like, okay, what do we do now? Because we didn't really have instant playback technology or anything like that. So there was this, we don't know who won, what do we do now?
What do we do now?
Yeah, fully.
And then actually looking at the data, it was a tie to the 10th.
Yes.
And it was like that, it was that close.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know, that's still one of my favorite races.
Which is crazy when you think of two drivers. They swapped lanes, swapped cars, did the whole thing, and they both nailed the exact same run twice, which is...
Yeah, it's bonkers.
Totally.
I mean, that's one thing you should say that we, in the concept is, and Jonathan and I know this well, but we always swap drivers and swap lanes, the idea being that it keeps the focus on the car. And, we sweep the track before we go
Well,
live.
that's the key to the concept. And so, I remember when we first did that race, put it on YouTube, the comments are like, oh, that's from Fast and the Furious. And it's like, well, no, actually, it's based off barrel racing, which has been around since the dawn of time, as in people just racing their horses and all that sort of stuff around a barrel and back. So
is that an Australian thing?
It's actually an American thing. But that sort of thing, just going, racing to somewhere and coming back is, people have done that on feet. So there's nothing in that idea at all. What is in the idea is that we swap lanes and swap drivers, and the focus goes back onto the car and not the drivers. And so that's the key to the whole thing.
Can you read the YouTube comments, Cosmo?
I do read the YouTube comments, by the way.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that the reason for doing this, you swap lanes because cars don't, normally, they actually turn better in one direction, and it's not always the same for each car. So, when we're out there on our test track, we're usually measuring, G-force in one direction and then the other, and they get average. But there's usually one direction that a car performs better. And so, by swapping lanes, you're kind of eliminating the advantage of a car being in one lane, and also swapping drivers. If a car is indeed quicker, it should win with whoever is behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's if they're that close, you might get a case where you get one car that's winning in one case and the other car wins in another case. But we usually do a runoff, and then we arrive at a result at some point.
Yeah, I think there's another thing in this is there are some rules to it, which is, and the one main rule is no one can lift off before the quarter mile. And that's because we need the quarter mile number. And if you are slightly lifting off just before you get to the quarter mile, to plan your braking, well, then that's not giving us a true.
Apart from the motorbike.
The motorbike actually, less, it would have ended up into next week. But But otherwise, that's probably one of the main rules. Now, after that, it is kind of up to the driver can be tactical of how they want to take the corner. And that's why you will get kind of different spaces between.
Yeah, I think we've all learned that different cars require slightly different techniques, and we're going to talk more about the EVs later, but if you think about something like the Lucid, skinny little tyres, not a lot of grip, lots of straight line thrust, so get it stopped, get it turned, and fire it out as quickly as possible, whereas other things like a Porsche 911 or something, you very much drive the corner. But we should move on to race 2, which I think is one of our favourites. And you mentioned that the Mustang GT500 was kind of part of the genesis of Edmunds U-Drags, because this was a car that we were constantly losing in a drag race because it was not the best at launching. And it was great in rolling races once it's up to speed. Drag racing, not so much. But we just thought this is underselling the car. This thing's awesome under brakes, awesome through the corner, tons of grip, great handling. So this was also part of the idea of how can we produce a test which shows off this car. So anyway, we turned it with the GT500 and the Black Ghost. So what's the full title? Challenger.
Yeah, Challenger, Black Ghost. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
I can't remember. That was 40 races ago.
Yeah.
But on the face of it, this was like a fairly even head-to-head. This was like two big Detroit muscle. The GT500 just destroyed it.
Equal start, but he's gone. Oh man, that never gets old. Break.
Yeah, I think anybody bench racing could look at the specs and be like, well, of course the Black Ghost is going to take it. It's got way more horsepower. You've got also a lot more tire, or at least comparable tires. And then we turn up with these things, and I was dumbfounded. Like the first race we had, the fact that the GT500 was so far ahead, you're just like, is there something wrong with this Challenger? Is it broken? That just goes to show you the difference in actual application. Like, you can talk about numbers all day long, but that, how that actually plays out in the real world can be very different.
Yeah, it was the Dodge was all show and no go. But in saying that, it looked awesome and it sounded insane. Go watch the video, and when you hear both cars going past the center cameras, it's just the best.
Typically, when we own a car, we run it for 20,000 miles in about a year, and then we sell it. And we had that car during the pandemic, and then we just kind of forgot. It was like, should we sell it this month? No, let's put it in another race. And I think we had it for like 3 or 4 years. But then because it was so collectible, we pretty much sold it for what we bought it for. So from a business perspective, got away with that one. But
yeah,
that was good. So one of the thing that I made a note of when I was rewatching the video before we did the show, and I love the fact on the Black Ghost that it's got that was a chiller mode.
Yeah.
So I remember one of the things about that circuit is it's either like 50 below or like 150 degrees, and I think it was like. And we're all sweating like hell, but we had to turn the air conditioning off to chill the intercooler because we thought that would give us more power. But in reality, more power is a bad thing because you just sat there waiting for the trucks to build.
It didn't just turn the AC off, but it would actively like pipe hot air in because it's trying to get rid of all the hot air as much as possible. So yeah, it was self-sacrifice for probably very little to no payoff.
Just to sit there smoking a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's good. We should talk before we get on the next race. We're going to start talking about like some of the EVs because they've just come in and kind of changed the whole landscape of what performance looks like in this format. But when we're choosing the vehicles, Jonathan, talk us through that a little bit because that's really looking at a data frame. So we have two things. We have our test track where we do like 30 days of testing a year, and that's all the kind of empirical data that informs all our reviews of the vehicles. And then we have the U-Drags thing, which is a different location. But we're using the test track data to inform the U-Drag concept.
Yeah, I mean, it's a process between the team, but usually, like, I think it starts with sort of like what would make for an exciting matchup. Like, if you can, ask somebody like, hey, what do you think would win in this in this format with these two cars. And if something like sparks some interest, I think that automatically kind of gets the research started.
Yeah.
If there aren't really any sort of obvious pairs, then we start really diving into our test track data, and then we can see like, oh, this car did a 0 to 60 in this, and quarter mile at this speed, and you end up with races like the Golf R versus the Fisker Ocean, which, nobody's gonna, think about that matchup, but because we have our empirical data, you can put those two together and lo and behold, you come up with something that's a little odd, but also kind of interesting.
The other one that really sprang to mind as well was Durango Hellcat against Audi RS Q8, where you had this kind of super sophisticated. I remember driving the Audi up to the location, and it was like, this thing's so fast, it's super sophisticated, it's wonderful. It's got carbon ceramic brakes. It's gonna destroy it. And the Durango, I just remember hitting the brakes. You always had to use 2 feet. But then the Durango, it was so close at the end of that race.
Yeah, well, won the first race.
Yeah, and the Durango now, I think that's one of my most popular races, and we'd never put that together apart from looking at the data and saying, actually, this is fast. And as long as you were willing to be really brutal with it, then that Durango was pretty impressive.
I remember, I had driven both those vehicles, beforehand, not back to back, and I was so sure that the RSQ8 was just going to wipe the floor with it. I'm like, there's no way this Durango has any chance, because it just feels so crude. It feels like it's from 2004, and
which it kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of is.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds and it feels like it's so physical to drive. Like the fact that you have to, I was standing on the brake pedal to try and get it stopped. And it was the kind of car, the harder you push, the harder it stopped. And that, that's usually not the case. Usually you reach a limit. Like the RSQ8, you could just kind of lay on the pedal and it would do all the braking for you. The Durango, you had to get really physical with it. But if you did, it would perform. And shockingly, it was so close between those two cars. I was yeah. I think when Brendan had asked
all
me,
of us were stunned on that. They won the first race. Everyone was like, what just happened?
I just remember turning in, there's so much mass and inertia. It's oh my God. And then the supercharger kicks in, you're but yeah, it was that was great. That was great fun. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah.
And then another one that sort of springs to mind, which I guess picking up on the Black Ghost thing, we realized that everybody loves the American muscle and noise, and I think we're all still huge fans. But then we put it against the Kia EV6 GT,
an electric SUV in
and the EV6 GT, I mean, we've seen later with things like the Hyundai Ioniq 5N, which are quite extrovert and got all the war paint, whereas the EV6 GT just looks like a little hatchback. They call it an SUV, it's basically a hatchback.
Yeah.
Doesn't really, apart from yellow calipers, that's about it. Doesn't really have anything that makes it look fast. This thing just came and destroyed everything.
Little bit of wheel spin from both of us. Oh, that EV6 is fast.
It was sliding around and off the line, all 4 wheels were spinning. It was insane. Yeah. And now it's going to get faster for this year, so I'll have to bring it back. But do you remember that race?
I remember that race, and also kind of a shocker at how easily the EV6 GT dispatched the Black Ghost, and just how mad it made everybody.
And it was straight off the line, it was gone.
Yeah, it was just no launch control. You just mat the accelerator and it just took off. And the fact that it also still felt really dynamic, it just sort of undersells itself. The looks don't match the experience behind the wheel. And then once you're driving, you're like, oh my God, this thing is crazy fast.
It's a total sleeper.
Yeah.
Total sleeper.
I think with that race too, this is, again, we'll get into the sort of the challenges with racing EVs and keeping them charged, but that didn't even have close to a full battery, and it still just destroyed the Black Ghost.
I've actually got the leaderboard up on my iPad here. So, of the 40, how many cars have we done? We've run 44 different cars as things stand. 2023 Kia EV6 GT, quarter mile 11.8, total runtime of 33.8. It is faster than the Mercedes-AMG C63 SE Performance, which is, I can't remember how much that is. It's faster than BMW M2, and it's literally just right behind Corvette Stingray. So Corvette Stingray does it in, so mid-engine V8, it's fair to say, like Supercar, very fast sports car, 33.4, Kia EV6 GT, 33.8, so 0.4 of a second slower.
Wow.
I mean, it's just insane.
You said M2, and I'm sure that's gonna, piss off a lot of people because it's like, well, no, the M2 is an M car, and it's so good to drive, and the EV6, like, it's not gonna give you that experience. But yes, we agree with all that. But the fact that the EV6 can, like, it's a 5-seater, genuine 5-seater with, a good amount of cargo space, and it can, it can just destroy cars.
Yeah, you can agree with all their points and still be beaten.
Yeah, exactly.
The only one that's more of an anomaly while I got the leaderboard up here. This is Edmunds.com/U-Drags, by the way, if you want to check it out. The other one that stands out is in 35.8 seconds, Toyota GR Supra manual.
Great car.
Faster, Rivian R1T, so it's an electric truck.
Yeah.
It's absolute madness.
The truck that can go, literally almost anywhere. Also can go like stink around this course.
I also remember that when you're in the Black Ghost, and I think I was in the EV6, and I just sort of disappeared in the distance, and you were shouting, "Do it for Detroit! Do it for Detroit!" And this Kia was just like gone.
That just came to me. I felt bad for our country. At that moment,
But we should talk about like the EV thing, because it's not just that they're fast, but when you doing it in this concept, like it's one of the anomalies for me, and it sometimes takes a bit of getting your head around. When you're going for ultimate performance, normally in a gas car, you go, as the fuel tank drains, then they get faster and faster. You see it in like Formula One or whatever it may be. But with the EVs, you've got to have them like 100% charged. And I think this is one of the nuances that we had to learn. And we can talk about how much pressure it puts on drivers as well, because once it gets past like 80%, then the performance really starts to drop off. I mean, I don't just mean like a tenth or two. I mean, you feel it. It's like visceral how much slower it goes.
Yeah, it's like you lost a cylinder, essentially.
Yeah.
We take every measure to try and ensure that we do these runs, with as full battery as possible. And in some cases, I think when you're looking at like the fastest EVs, I think with the Taycan, it's like, as long as you're at like 95% or somewhere in between 95% and 90, like it's still possible to kind of click in your fastest lap. But yeah, once that drops down to 90, you've kind of lost your chance at getting the fastest lap time, and that's what we're after. Like that's the whole point of this. Regardless of who wins, it's like we're still needing to like secure the best possible lap time for each car. And that is a challenge, especially if you're hopping to a car for the first time on a course. You have no idea how fast it's gonna go, how hard you need to brake. In some of these cars, like with fast EVs, like you need to be on the brake as hard as possible right at the quarter mile.
Yeah. And
you still might almost miss the apex because you're carrying so much speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, the challenges of running an EV in these U-Drags is really hard.
Yeah, no, I mean, as soon as we see, if there's like 5 or 6 in, I guess people don't really know this, that we actually shoot them over 2 days. But, when we've got 5 or 6 EVs lined up, that creates a massive logistical headache for us as to how we charge them all and keep the races running and things like that.
I think we can probably share a picture of it, but when we had the Taycan Turbo GT, the Lucid Sapphire, the Tesla Model S Plaid with track pack, which we'd spent an age trying to get those 3 together in the same place at the same time. And, I think the Porsche had come all the way across the States from Atlanta. Lucid came down with their own car and the tires on it and everything else. And we were having to, because there's no fast charger there, or no fast charger clearly where the airfield is, we were actually charging them from, we had our Lucid that we own as part of our kind of ownership experience. And again, not many people realize you can do this on certain vehicles, Lucid being one of them. You can actually steal charge from one EV to charge another. So we were kind of trickle charging the EVs trying to do this. And then from a driving perspective, there's 2 big challenges. One is we're shooting 5 of these races a day, so we just don't have time to do endless practice runs. And secondly, in the EVs, you can't do practice runs particularly because you're just burning the charge. So if you're lucky, you get like 1 practice run, then you're into it.
Right.
And I think with that Lucid Sapphire and the Taycan, and then I remember on the Taycan run, on the right lane where I was, there was a bump that was activating the stability control. And I think we did one run where it just activated the spook and basically just put the brakes on.
Yeah.
And then not only it's like, I'm going, oh no, we just used all the charge, but also you got the whole production crew, you just now got like, nah, screwed it up. I was like, no, there's a bump.
Well, I think just, I guess what a lot of people don't realize with U-Drags is that there is a lot of pressure on the drivers. And that's because generally they only have 2 practice runs.
If that, sometimes we shoot the rehearsal.
Yeah. And so in EVs, half the time we shoot the rehearsal just because of the charge situation. In gas cars, it's generally only 2 runs and we have to actually then get into the races. So, getting familiar with the car is probably, if you're lucky, driving up to the location and you're not driving at speed or anything like that. So there is a lot of pressure on the drivers because they're,
Thank you for acknowledging it.
Yeah, there 100% is because you both have to perform on the spot.
And you're trying to say something vaguely coherent at the same time.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What car am I in again?
Yeah, this especially like the end of day, the end of day 2. It's like, what car is this, and where are we going again?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we call the practice runs, practice runs, but like, I also want to impress that these are not like full runs. Like, essentially, we're just trying to check that the launch control works and know how hard you need to brake. Like, if for the fast cars, the Sapphire. Like, again, braking as hard as you possibly can because you're doing 150 plus miles an hour by the time you hit the quarter mile. And it is like, you are just trying to scrape for as much braking as you possibly can. When Alistair and I go into it, we don't know who's going to win. Like, it's all real.
Correct,
like, we want to have it as realistic as possible.
The only time we do it again is when we like properly screw up. Which occasionally, let's say like something on the car, like with the Plaid, it was hitting a bump, it activated the stability control.
The camera goes flying off the car.
Or cameras flying off the car, or like but generally speaking, we treat it as a race because largely with the EVs, for charge reasons, we kind of have to as well. We should talk a little bit about that Lucid Tesla Porsche experience because I've been doing this a long time now, as have you, and we've driven pretty much everything over the last 20 years or so, but getting into those things, suddenly you've got like 1,100, or what's the Lucid got, 1,234? Yeah. So suddenly getting into that, it was like just a whole other world of, oh my God. It's the same with Formula One. If you go and watch a Grand Prix live and you see the cars and the performance, it's a whole different world to what you see on TV. And I think it's the same for this. It was hard to get the sense of like the violence of the acceleration when you're doing 0 to 60 in like, I think Porsche did in 2.1 or something, and then you're flying through the quarter mile and you brake. It's like a pretty violent experience. And I think it was only one, there was like what we call the A camera, but basically sits on the pillar of the car, and you could see like it shaking under the force. And Jonathan's like, but that was the only time I looked at it and thought that kind of looks realistic. The rest of it is a bit like,
Yeah, it makes you self-conscious a little bit when you're like, I made that face when I'm accelerating. But like just to kind of paint a picture, like the force of acceleration that these cars are capable of generating, it's like, I'm pretty sure that my eyeballs are like physically deforming and your vision goes blurry for just a little bit. And so you have that, you're trying to focus on like what's down the straight and like how hard you need to brake. Like, I don't know if anybody watching this has went to full ABS, like braking as hard as you can from 150 miles an hour. It's an experience.
All right.
Like it is like properly adrenaline producing, like, braking from 60 miles an hour. Even if you slam on your brakes from 60, if you've never done that before, it'll probably surprise most people. You do it at 150, and you're like, I hope I get it stopped. I hope I can keep it together.
Yeah, like it's feather it in, then you like trail brake. So we're not like off the brakes and then, so it's not like brake like hell, off the brakes, turn it. Actually what we're trying to do most of the time, because the corner's quite tight, is feed off the brakes as you're putting the steering lock in, and so you're trying to balance all that out. And again, we've only got wide. That was the one time actually that Lucid against the thing, because we were conscious it was probably going to set a new record. That was like really the adrenaline. Not only was it really fast, we knew we couldn't like do too many runs because of the charging situation. All the crew were up for it. That was like one where you're like, you know, you do a few of these, the adrenaline goes down a bit. That was one where you could properly feel like the little ticker going.
Yeah. Once you've already kind of thrown yourself off the cliff, the second time isn't as dramatic.
And also,
just to pick up on the braking side of it, even like on other videos we've done, I think if you really watch the videos and watch the braking part of the races, you'll see which cars actually get unsettled under braking, and like which is you know can be
exciting.
It can be very exciting.
The Lucid was incredibly impressive from that perspective, just how secure and how good it. The Porsche, more exciting because it moves around a lot more. It's more like a proper sports car. That Lucid was very. I remember like coming through the corner in the Lucid, and I think it was like the first run of day 2 of filming, and we're up against I think it was the Porsche we're up against. I remember just a sense of relief when I like got my power down coming out of the corner. It's just like, you know, really, it must be incredibly exciting. You must love this. And actually, my overriding emotion was like, oh, thank God for that. That was okay.
Yeah, as you're making your way back, whether you're in front or behind, like it's like I've done my job.
Yeah. Yes.
Like it's the car's job from here on out.
Yeah.
Come on, Porsche!
And I think right lane and left lane, when you look at the data, I think it was like 2/10 or something. So like, you know, there's a little bit of surface, or which, as you say, whether you're turning left, right. So yeah, we kind of feel like it just has, oh God, I do this, but.
Yeah, I mean, we generally like our interest lies in like which car, the faster car should win in any case.
Yes.
Like that is the goal of the result of these races is the fastest car should win.
And that's the problem with EVs, when you get down to like 70% charge, like what's the fastest car changes. And the other thing with the ICE cars, I mean, like the BMW is a good example of this. I think we had an M4 that was starting to overheat because it was 110 degrees. And then you're like, now this is now like everything's getting hot, and then the launch control doesn't start. So there's all that in it as well. But we should talk a little bit, before we get into like another race, we should talk a little bit about the filming, because behind the scenes is actually, I think, a really impressive crew of 20 odd people, and you know, a lot of cameras now to try and pull this off. And you watch the early race to where we are now, it's like a big sea change.
When you cover a drag race, it's actually quite easy. Once you realize the car's going to be coming back in the other direction, the whole dynamic of the production changes, even just from a safety perspective. So that's what turned everything on its head instantly. And we had to really think through where we're going to put all these cameras, and how do we get the best vantage points and things like that. So, you know, so now it's a production of 25 cameras. And the funny thing is, I think if a lot of people watch them, they probably wouldn't realize how many cameras or how much coverage they're actually receiving. But yeah, there's 25 cameras, between 4 and 5 drones, depending on the day, that get coverage. And then obviously the rest are GoPros and things like that. But out of all that, there's only 6 people that are operating all those cameras. And we had to work out, how do you fire off all these cameras and do it in you know, quickly, that you guys can get racing, you know. So it was for something that looks very straightforward on a video, like especially these days, it feels like everyone just turns up with a phone and then job done. It's not that. It's like the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, and I mean, not to mention, if anything goes wrong, you've got, you know, a malfunctioning like countdown timer.
Yeah.
You've got a car that won't go into launch control.
Yeah.
You've got any number of issues. You've got drones in the air that are running out of battery. It's like, I have 3 minutes and 30 seconds left of battery. Like, can we get this race done?
Yeah.
Like, it is 100%,
like... And that's where the pressure comes on you guys to get it right, like, you know, the first time.
Because you can really, I don't know if it's for you, Jonathan, but like, if you ever screw anything up, you can... Everybody's terribly polite, nobody says a word, but you just know, like, the inner voice is like...
You can hear the collective sigh.
I can just, oh, for God's sake.
The whole team.
Actually, we have some of the crew here, isn't that right? Casey, Charlie?
No, you guys are doing great. Never happens.
I mean, it's things like, you know, BMWs, which launch amazingly when they launch, but they can be like a bit
fickle.
finicky.
Oh,
They can be very
yeah.
fickle. Yeah. And so that sort of thing is like, you know, to get the car to reset, you have to drive it up and down the track for a bit, and then it'll normally settle in and you can do it. But that whole time, the cameras are running.
Yeah.
We're burning through batteries and tape and all that sort of stuff. So.
And the BMWs have very specific criteria before the launch control works, and you don't really know whether it's working till you've got about 4 seconds to go. Didn't play ball. Just didn't work. Like, oh, come on.
Yeah, which can be like really build up to anticlimax.
Yeah.
I mean, like it's a roller coaster of adrenaline, because it's like, even being in the other car, if you're not driving the BMW but you're racing a BMW, you've got, you know, laser focus. Okay, I'm gonna gotta do my own launch control, and then like all of a sudden when it's like go, you hear honk honk, like cancel, the BMW launch control is not working. So. Yeah. And then you have to like reset.
And
you got to get back into that.
Again.
Yeah. So you just never know when the plug is going to be pulled on that race.
Yeah.
We should talk about
totally like torture.
We'll talk about things. So we haven't just done the kind of like super expensive hypercar stuff. We've also done some really like engaging races with more affordable cars, shall we say? And one of those was Acura Type S against Honda Civic Type R. Start.
Come on.
It was a weird matchup because they are ostensibly fundamentally the same car, but they have a little slight tweak in power. They got slightly different tires, but there was that sense of we knew this was going to be super close. Manual cars, something else to think about.
Manual gearbox. Anytime there's like a manual gearbox involved, and you're like, okay, well, this is now taking more of the driver into account, because it's the shift speed, it's the launch. You know, these cars, especially on the surface, I was concerned with how the Type R was launching, because it had the, I think, Cup 2 tires, which is super grippy, and the engine RPM was just, limited by so much. So you couldn't physically get more boost to spool up, and so it was always going to bog off the launch. And so in that situation, it's like, okay, well, you really got to get it right. Like, anybody that's actually launched a car, whether it's at a drag strip, like it's a skill, and it's even more difficult if you're not, intimately familiar with that car. So you've just gotten in, you need to get the launch done, especially against, a heads-up race. It's a lot of pressure.
And I think we do read the comments, and a lot of us say, oh well, like, CarWow did this or did this, and the reality is, like, different surfaces make a difference. Our test track is lower grip. It's probably more akin to the real world and normal road conditions. This is an airfield which is by definition super grippy. Now, in some ways that helps, like GT500 where you got traction limited, great. Honda Civic Type R, where actually you want to spin the front wheels up a little bit for optimum. It's just like
Yeah, I mean, the surface is also kind of variable just because it's an open airfield. It's exposed to the elements. You've got other vehicles on there when we're not there. We do a good job of cleaning it. We have like sweeper trucks that come through and we clean the surface as well as possible, but it's still exposed to the elements. And so you've got areas of high grip, you've got areas of low grip because, there's gravel that has come, onto the track at some point. So yeah, I mean, it's about as like real world as you can get because nothing is completely consistent on this course.
Yeah. I do remember the time we spent 20 minutes having to get rid of stray dogs before we could run as well.
Oh, yeah, snakes, all sorts of wildlife.
What we should probably do with the time that we have left, maybe we should all just pick our favorite car and why. Jonathan, do you want to go first?
Sure. Like it's hard because like I generally like to pick cars that I can afford, and I certainly can't afford this one. But the McLaren 750S was still a car that really stands out in memory. And there was a point where it was, kind of tied for quickest car. The 765 LT was a little quicker across the finish, but that 750 just the visceral feel of how it accelerates and brakes and just the lightness. It's not the quickest car anymore. Yeah. We've got 3 EVs that are quicker, and plus, its brother, the 765. But that still really stands out in my memory. Like it just, I think the adrenaline was probably the highest in that car just because of all the sensations that came along with it. So that's, I'm gonna die a happy man having driven that car.
That's a very cool car. Totally British as well. Brendan, what about?
It's a tough one because obviously there's all the classics like the McLaren and all that sort of stuff, but and the GT500. But there's probably two that stand out in my mind, and I think the M8. Although people say it's very well, it's not the best looking car, but
I love the way
I actually drove it back from there, and it's just such a beautiful car to drive, and yet it's just such a beast on the course, and its launch is just amazing.
It's basically BMW does the Mustang GT500, but charges twice as much in a slightly more sophisticated package.
Totally, and it's just so cool, and it's kind of like a sleeper because no one really notices the M8. And then, but if I was going to add to that, when I'm feeling like a baller, it would probably be the Bentley GT Continental Speed, which was, again, like just such an insane package for what it is. It's such a big car, but like brutally fast for what it is.
Yeah, I mean, given like just the sheer size of that thing, like it's a coupe, but it's like, wow. I didn't realize you could make a coupe this big and heavy.
Totally.
And it just feels like it oozes luxury and excess. And then you fire it down the line, and then you're like, oh man, this thing stops and it turns and it'll get oversteer. Like it's like.
It's a triumph of engineering.
I know, it is.
Everything's
against all odds.
Yeah, totally.
So for me, like you mentioned, like coming out of the EVs, like you have to kind of like reattune to what performance is. And I remember getting into like, I think it was the C63 AMG afterwards, and it felt like a hot hatchback because it was so. But one car that got into it, which isn't the fastest, but in terms of just the visceral sensation, which did remind me of the McLaren. I guess that was Chevy trying to do was the Z06. I just think it's an amazing car. I thought the Z06 was just the noise, that flat plane crank, it feels like a little race car. I mean, love that thing.
You can get, a good part of the McLaren experience in the Z06 at a fraction of the price. And so I'm glad that it exists.
It's a pretty big fraction. Still 150 grand.
Totally, but a fraction less. I think our McLaren was scratching, $500,000 as it sat, with all the options and stuff. So
it's a lot of money, but cheap for what it does.
Yeah.
There we go. So cars, we're going to continue to do this. I hope we'll carry on as we go into like looking ahead into 2025. I was kind of doing like a list in my head, the kind of cars that we'd love to have there. One that strikes me, Corvette ZR1. It was like, what could beat the Lucid Sapphire? It sounds ridiculous. The Lucid Sapphire is a big sedan, but it's got mega brakes, big tyres, and 1,200 horsepower. So what beats that? And the one that struck me, which could, is the Corvette ZR1, because it's going to have 1,000 plus horsepower. It's a mid-engine supercar. You would hope it's faster through braking, faster through the corner.
Yeah.
I think the remots, like I think that probably, like, you're talking about something that's purpose built, so far more less practical than a Sapphire. Because Sapphire you can actually daily drive. This one you would not.
I mean, the Remac's got that's got 2,000 horsepower.
Something stupid.
I drove the Pininfarina, which uses a lot of the same hardware, the Pininfarina Battista.
Yeah.
And I drove it in Malibu, near where our office is, and that has 1,750 horsepower, and that was just ridiculous on the road. I mean, it's a piece of art. It's a piece of jewelry. It's not really a car, but I mean, that might be another one. The Rimac or the Battista would be quite fun.
I mean, what's crazy about it, like even with the ZR1, is that it's still like in sports / supercar realm, and you have a Sapphire. That's just a big cruiser. It's and you need that sort of vehicle to try and beat a Sapphire, which is
I got some others down here. Ferrari F80. That's the the next generation Ferrari hypercar. McLaren has the W1, but that's rear-wheel drive. That's like 1,000 horsepower rear-wheel drive. Well, as is the Corvette though, for that matter. What else? Got Bugatti Tourbillon. Looks fantastic.
Or the Sperling, like I think the Sperling McMurty. McMurty. That thing looks like it's being fast forwarded in real time.
It looks
you
like
see
a
it on the
bullet.
road, you're just like,
Yeah.
That's the
Your
car
brain.
that went up the Goodwood Festival speed at
Yeah.
insane speed.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's not.
It looks like
you
a
know,
bullet. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think it's a real car, but
And then,
but I'd love to drive it.
Totally,
Yeah.
One other one that strikes me that I think we will definitely be able to get there, which is the BMW M5 Touring. It's the first time BMW's had an M car as a touring.
Yeah,
I grew up with these in Europe, but
yeah, they're amazing. I think that going against the RS6 Avant
Yeah.
would be awesome.
That'd be good. I'll put a Labrador
I'd love
in
to
the
see
back.
that. I'd love to do that.
Yeah.
So just to round things up then, because we've probably blathered on enough, favourite moment?
Favorite moment? Oh, I think seeing the very first race that we did, which was the CT5 Blackwing and the Cadillac, or actually probably the second race, which was seeing the GT500 go across the line at full tilt and just hearing it absolutely roaring, like just shredding the air as it goes.
Despite the dodgy start, I'm looking at the Shelby leaving me for dead.
Not the Kawasaki motorbike. I know you're a big fan.
Oh no, that was epic as well. But oh god, I was sweating the whole time I was watching that. It was almost like I was glad it was over because Chris Moore, like.
Yeah.
That dude,
That guy
it's like
sends it,
man.
man.
Have you seen his leathers? It's like he's wearing pajamas. Like that's how thin that. If he comes off on that surface, he's just going to be torn to shreds. But watching him launch that every single time was just nerve-wracking. So I wouldn't say it was my best moment.
I wasn't there for that one. Jonathan?
I don't know. I'm still in shock that we've done over 50 of these racing, so I can't quite remember, all the moments. But like I think just actually remembering the Chris Moore race. I had the 911 Turbo Turbo S at that point, and actually just seeing the bike being passed by bike as you're in a 911 Turbo S, like to the max, and the bike just flies by you.
Yeah.
Is insane.
And then you've got to watch how he's going to brake.
Yeah, and then I'm like, see you later. So he starts braking 200 feet before I do, and I'm just like,
You were listening to Beethoven with the air conditioning on.
I had the seat coolers on, and it was like, I think that was the day that it was 100, 150 degrees,
Yeah,
and
it was
Chris
a
is
hot
out there
day.
just fully exposed and working so hard. But yeah, that was super cool. Like that was a unique experience for me.
Yeah, I'm going to say, there's a few things about it, like Durango Hellcat was just great fun, like just the Lucid and just the sheer acceleration of that, and the Taycan and the Turbo GT and stuff was something that I'll really remember because it was so visceral. But it's just like, the other thing I say, I just enjoy being part of the scene, and we feel very lucky to do this for a living, I suppose, and to be part of like a crew of people who are so dedicated to it.
Yep.
And, it's great that we've been able to build an audience for this, and people seem to like it, and we want to continue to build that audience. And, that for me that's like camaraderie. If you go up there, it's really hot, you're really tired, you're a bit emotional, you feel the pressure.
It's hard.
And it's like, but it's like you come away and it feels like it's an amazing thing to be involved in. And so we really appreciate, everybody who's, watched the content, left us all the comments. We always read all those. We're always trying to improve what we do as time goes by. And if when we've been selling T-shirts now, I never thought we'd be selling T-shirts when we started this, or at least trying to sell T-shirts. I'm not sure how many we've actually sold. But as we go ahead into the year, then we're going to plan on doing more of these, and hopefully some really exciting races to come. Jonathan, thank you so much. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us and also being part of this epic adventure we've had. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Check out edmunds.com for all your car shopping needs. Buy a T-shirt. I think you still get a baby grow with Edmunds U-Drags on it. I did that last time I looked at the YouTube store. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully we will have far more entertaining Edmunds U-Drags coming up over the next year or so. And goodbye for now.